the story of the first movies.
No one had ever seen anything like it before.
What began as a sideshow novelty soon grew into something more when the first filmmakers discovered they could use the new medium to tell stories.
Wow.
Of what does film criticism consist, and why? Is it merely a technique for telling the difference between a postcard and a Van Gogh? Between a movie and film art? Tensions aside, at base level most moviegoers know the difference between a bombastic and safe blockbuster, and a penetrating film whose technique, and not just its subject matter, forces you to acknowledge sorrow, pain, and grief. Yet also joy, wonder, and magic.
If you believe, clap your hands. Clap louder.
Words on a page are not true to either the form or power of a film. No amount of description fully evokes the combination of angles, sets, props, acting, sound, and editing a scene, much less the entirety of a film, presents.
That is never allowed.
In most critical writing, you can easily quote a paragraph or stanza or term from the source without corrupting its original presentation.
Georges Melies.
But in a field that combines both visual and moving elements, only a format containing those elements can fully express a thought beholden to its source.
There's a great line being used to promote silent movies, and they say that you can listen to them with your eyes.
From Siskel and Ebert to the current populism of internet reviewers as divergent as Doug Walker's entertaining nostalgia critic, to the more analytical reviewers at Shea Apocalypse, film criticism is increasingly moving into the realm of the video essay. Aaron Sultanit's book Film, A Modern Art claims film as an apex of modernism. But if modernism is rightly understood birthed from the Renaissance and the psychology of Shakespeare, and the grace of Michelangelo injecting a dynamic humanism into philosophy, there still remain the Enlightenment's rational quest for static absolutes and things in themselves well into the 19th century. It took the horrific absurdity of World War I to move postmodernism forward, where decentralized meta-narrative more aptly embraces a dynamic apprehension of reality. But not without risk.
This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. New ignorance, new problems, new dangers. Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward.
Film history begins with Thomas Edison's kinetograph and kinetoscope, creating modern pictures seen by a sole individual. In 1894, movies began with a sneeze. But in France, the Lumiere brothers redesigned a previous design into a brand new camera, incorporating filming and projecting for an audience into a single machine. In 1896, cinema begins with a train. The Lumiere brothers no longer just documented movement into space. They composed motion an audience apprehended as their own.
I fell in love with their invention. How could I not be part of it?
And so the great adventure began.
Georges Melies begged for a camera, but the Lumieres refused. So the stage magician devised his own and went on to direct over 500 short films in less than 20 years.
Come and dream with me.
1902 saw the release of his most ambitious film yet, A Trip to the Moon. It was not the first narrative film by Melies, but he brought all of his experience and craft to bear in a single package. The cast of characters was enormous, the sets lavish and tailored for each shot. Watch as the change of camera perspective from this shot to this necessitates a completely different set, yet maintains the illusion of a single scene and series of events. From here, the adventurers rocket to a personified moon. Face the dangers of the moon's inhabitants. And return to Earth. It's not the most complicated of stories, yet I find it does keep its charm.
Being a magician lends itself to becoming a filmmaker. He was the first one to experiment with stop motion and drama and narrative, and use cinema to that advantage that it is completely a medium for transformation.
Stop edits were used often by Melies after his accidental discovery of a mind's ability to accept the sudden substitution or absence of an object in a frame merely by stopping the camera, replacing or removing the object, and filming again. This simple edit obliterates movement one after another. The dissolve smooths transitions between time and place. After the travelers escape the throne room, the film is reeled back and shooting the next scene overlaps the images on the film. As a viewer, the illusion gives the sense of events transpiring between this shot and the next, as your mind adjusts to the new reality. Perhaps they met no resistance in a long climb. Perhaps they blew up another dozen moon men. It's unessential to the plot, but gives you space to imagine events. Double exposure is the filming of two or more distinct shots on the same frame, allowing different figures in time to occupy the same screen space, such as in this fantasy scene where the viewer takes in both dreamers and dream. Wildly popular at first, why did Melies leave filmmaking?
What I was doing in that room was trying to figure out what had happened to me, and for some reason, Wayne Gretzky made it kind of clear when his father was training Wayne, because his father was Wayne's first coach as well. His father would take him out into a backyard ice rink that he built himself right behind their house for his son to sit there and play hockey on and shit. And he would say to his son, Wayne, when you're playing, don't go where the puck is. You want to go where the puck's gonna be. And that was the one piece of advice that put the greatest scoring genius the game has ever known on the path to become a legend. And I was like, that applies everywhere.
Melies kept going after the same puck. Compare his 1899 Cinderella film with his own 1912 Cinderella remake. The later set dressing is much more elaborate, and the plot is certainly longer with additional complications. But fundamentally, the style of shooting has not changed. Camera angles don't change within a scene. The audience is nearly always in a fixed, distant position, as if the frame were nothing more than a window onto a single, immovable stage. Even his later fairy godmother needs lovely assistance, as any magician would. His heritage as a stage magician fueling his innovations was a viewpoint from which he never left. Never adapted to the changing demands of the audience. What advanced dynamic apprehension before became stale. We were asked to dream, yet only allowed to watch his dreams from a distance, never allowed to see behind the magician's cape. Now, Lumiere's train not only comes at you, but its depth of perspective devouring the screen contrasted against the frame's other half, grants it speed and power, nearly thrusting out of the screen. Simple but striking composition. And despite the bulk of their camera, they labored to find high-angled shots and low-angled shots. And part of their commitment was to trust traveling cameramen to use their own instincts in capturing footage. Egypt, Russia, Japan, Lumiere cameramen scoured the world. And while Melies did experiment with vivid color in his frames, it never reached the dynamism of this rare Lumiere experiment. Melies' imagination may be vast, but ultimately his Glass Star Studio productions hold the ultimate limitation of a dreamer, himself. As in his earlier short, The Astronomer's Dream, the breathtaking pace of postmodernism cannot help but create new ills. Searching the heavens and bringing them down to our level may reveal only a ravenous, consuming universe. The moon of our dreams eats us alive. the terms of a Faustian contract straight out of Christopher Marlowe's theater? Or is it only the result of a depth of vision restricting its horizon? A stage magician eager to bring magic to the movies, but unwilling to step off the stage, unwilling to invite you up.
Oh my God, you're Michael Bay!
Every frame of painting's Tony Joe calls director Michael Bay's bombastic style Bayhem.
You may find it crass and vulgar, but if we're going to make better movies, we have to understand the images that are coming at us. So let's talk about Bayhem. Is it a unique use of film form? Break down any Michael Bay shot, and that is basically what you will see. Layers of depth, parallax, movement, character, and environment to give this sense of epicness. Once you see this, it's much easier to deconstruct his imagery and to see its limits. For instance, Bay doesn't distinguish between when to do a shot and when not to do it. Every shot is designed for maximum visual impact, regardless of whether it fits. Michael Bay seems to think a good film is 3,000 dynamic shots and no static ones. This might sound a little weird, but the person who loses the most here is actually Michael Bay. He is a slave to his own eye. He has a need to make every image dynamic, even when it runs contrary to the theme of his movie.
Some people just don't know a good thing when it's staring them in the face.
It really is the simple things in life.
Yeah, the little things, like a big house, a dock, a view of the water, and a speedboat.
For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon, and to the planets beyond. And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not see space filled with weapons of mass destruction, but with instruments of knowledge and understanding.
While cinema is a dynamic apprehension of reality, the narrow horizon of Méliès' amazing imagination ultimately could not keep pace with film's evolution, and on the eve of World War I, his studio folded. But film is a language, and what does language do?
To communicate.
No! To woo women.
Nietzsche asks, supposing the truth is a woman, what then? Yes, dynamism is a destructive, deconstructive force, and film can not only destroy illusions by documenting a flat reality, but also alter it beyond recognition. Yet a broad horizon of angles, perspectives, locations, and color, coupled with an intense depth of imagination, all elements of filmmaking, and thus reality, can put us back together again. The decentralized person has a new ground without the tyranny of thinking it the only ground, the only stage on which to act.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people.
And still, it is a masterpiece.